Cabo Rojo. Edwin Lugo Walker. I walked through the salty ocean-side deadly desert town. The cold gun frosted with the morning dew, unrepentant and calm bade me farther down the valley. A sweet sweat covered my face. All night I had walked the streets of Cabo Rojo looking for a way out, but the sun's heat creeping in like old vengeance assured me that someone else had to die today. Tequila sour in my stomach pounded on my brain. All I could see was my cloudy past spin ancient phantoms before me. Norberto, stop playing in that dirt. Oye este muchacho. My mother would yell while my stepfather drank and gambled with his compadres in front of our old lively house. The men gambled everything they did and did not own. They'd even gamble their wives and children. I never forgot the day my stepfather lost it all. The day the man in white came for us. He was dressed perfectly in white, a certain white that with the sun's help split one's eye. Even the soles of his shoes I imagine were white. He never once smiled and moved in on us with complete preciseness. His horse was also white, pale and still like the looming apocalypse. My mother Lana did not cry nor weep on that day but seemed calm and defiant. Pack your toys, Norberto, her hair whipping in the dust. Porque? It whine in a loop, porque? The man in white sliced the air with a voice that boomed and made the hot desert air blow a dry heat over us. Do not bring anything. What you need will be provided. My stepfather sat dumbstruck in the same chair he had spent the night before gambling, lifelessly looking into his lap. 2. My mother picked me up and dropped me in the white man's carriage. Don't worry, this man will be good to us, better than your father. This man will show us how rich people live and we too will be rich. She cupped my face and forced a smile onto hers. We rode for half a day and passed many beautiful mansions. The sun had almost set as we arrived down a flowered road and further on to a servant house that had, from what I could tell, no roof. My heart dropped. The windows were all broken in and what was once a wealthy servant ranch was now in ruins. The man in white commanded us inside. Once inside precisely and without warning he grabbed my mother by the throat and said, "If you ever run I will find you, kill your son and then cut off your legs." My mother did not fight him. His hands raised her dress and slowly tore off her underclothes. He waved them near his face and his smile turned into a grimace. Go to the well outside and wash yourself. She went without argument while I watched him roll a perfectly white cigarette, one eye dead on me as he asked my age. I did not know how to answer him. He bent down at the waist so as to inspect me and struck me dead across the mouth with a tight fist. When I ask you something you answer immediately, entiende? I was in such terrible pain but too scared to cry out. Blood filled my mouth. I'm 5. I gurgled out bright blood. I was really 4, but I remembered all my friends back home proudly announcing defiantly they were each no less than 5 years old. My mother came back inside, her dress half wet. 3. She picked me up off the floor to examine me. Come on. The man in white chortled and grabbed her up by the wrist and flung her up against the dusty black iron stove and began to feel underneath her wet dress. She pushed him away at the shoulders. He withdrew his hand and smelled his fingers. Arg, you still smell. He laughed maniacally and began to loosen his pants. He pushed her back down onto the cold stove. She kicked his legs while he laughed harder. He shook her violently until her head hit the iron stove. His giant hand pressed against her face. He pushed his full weight onto her small frame and began to move in wild repetition. Go outside, Norberto, go outside. She managed to yell and cry out in a sputter. Go outside. But I could not move. I could not move anywhere. I looked into this horrible man's face and witnessed a backward smile and for a short moment what seemed true vulnerability. Arg, you bitch, don't. You, move. He forced himself onto her again slowly one last time and she screamed. I bolted at him but he turned around and knocked me clear across the floor, this time on conscience. When I woke up my mother was on the floor next to me and the man in white was now no longer perfectly white but bloodied and soiled. You fucking bitch, I should kill you. He muttered as he fastened himself in the cold, moist, waning twilight. Senor Lopez was his name and we now belonged to him. We lived on his ranch. We saw him only twice a month when he came to collect crops and or provisions for his mansion. We never went hungry because we never stopped working. 4. Lopez had a son named Edgardo Lopez but we knew him affectionately as Cholo. Unlike his father, Cholo was kind. 11 years had passed since we came to Cabo Rojo and Cholo was the only uniquely kind person I had known. Cholo often came to see me at night when his father was asleep. Norberto levantate. Cholo would tap at the window. Norberto. His face distinguished in the dark. What are you doing, man? You know I gotta get up in a few hours. I complained. I know, but I have to show you something. Look here. He had brought me magazines and books back from the United States of America. He would come often to read me asleep stories of the world outside Cabo Rojo. Senor Lopez also had a daughter who was just as evil, if not more so, than her father. Her name was Senorita Luz Lopez. Norberto. She would always sing my name as I plowed and baked in the hot sun near the riverbank. Would you like some of my lemonade? She stood laughing as she ran the tall glass of ice and lemon juice along her inner thigh and then deliberately spilling it all onto the dusty dry ground as she laughed out loud. It was also her custom when she rode into town as she passed to declare how hot it was. Oh my God, so hot. But wait, I think it's raining. She'd then stop and summarily spit on me from her horse mount. Luz was a rare specimen, a storybook beauty, but an uglier person I had never met. One night Cholo and I were reading murder mysteries late into the night. The lamplight reflected in his glasses illuminated the room. My father wants me to become a rancher like him. I'd rather die. His book flopped limp on the bed. 5. Can I ask you something? I took the book from him. You mean something else? He clarified. We both laughed. Seguro. He said. Would you do something for me? I asked. Serious? I confirmed. K? He asked. Cholo, you are smart and handsome. You're the son of a wealthy land baron. The world is open to you. You don't have to be a rancher, man. You can go wherever your mind takes you. I searched for his eyes. Cholo, I need to ask a serious favor of you. Serious? He found my eyes. Norberto, are you in trouble? Cholo squinted. Now listen to me. Cholo, you don't understand. I needed you to do me a life's favor. I need you to go into town for me. I've been saving up and I think I might have enough now. I want you to go buy me a gun. I plainly stated. Cholo frowned in amazement. Why? Why? Cholo complained. For months I had been trying to ask him and I finally did. I knew this would be the only way to get one. If I were to go into town they would ask me too many questions. What do I need with a gun? Why would I need one? They will not sell it to me, but you're the son of a baron. No one is going to ask you anything. Cholo sat on my bed's edge and lost himself in my face, wondering my true motives. And if you get a gun, what do you intend on doing with it? I don't know. I'll just have one. My quick comeback was a poorly disguised lie. You know I can't do that, Norberto. My father would have me shot. God, my God, plus I wouldn't even know where to begin to find one. Cholo began to ramble and stutter as his volume level rose, looking for another excuse. Shh, I brushed his lips with my forefingers. The image of his father on top of my mother stabbing at my brain. 6. I knew exactly what I had to do next. I knew what the son of my only enemy really secretly and undoubtedly wanted from me. As for me, it was to be considered a fair and amicable exchange. I removed his wire rims and kissed him dead on the mouth. His body heaved and his shoulders rose. I grabbed his small arm so he could not move. Do you love me? I asked him plainly, both of us panting for air from this deliberate and strategic kiss. Yes, Norberto, he admitted, more than anything, but I'm afraid. And this time he kissed me. We made a pact, a special bond that night. We held each other and explored our young eager bodies. His was white, pure and scarless, mine was dark, scared and rough. He smelled like sweet bitters, clean soap, and had not completely lost the original scent of a brand new baby. The salty taste of old vengeance sweet on my young brought me closer to the kill. My mother Laura woke up that morning with more pain in her body than usual. Her back was strong but her arms were thin and tired. She swung open the curtain to my room. Norberto, get up and get ready, the master comes today, vamonos. She was used to seeing us in bed together all the time and thought nothing unusual of this very particularly unusual morning. Good morning, I said. Cholo, enveloped in my arms like a baby bird, emerged. Not used to this early hour. He peeled himself from me and turned around to face me. Okay. I'll go into town for you, but you must promise not to kill anyone, especially my father or my sister. He had landed dead on what my heart desired most. I would never do anything to hurt you, Edgardo. 7. I said, using his Christian name, which I thought made it more believable. We smiled at each other in aimless abandon that soon escalated into a high hysteria as we poked and pulled each other out of bed, tumbling onto the floor. Senor Lopez came to collect provisions earlier than usual, and my mother and I were both busy out in the fields. There was no one at the servant house to greet him. Intolerable, he spat and fumed from his pores. He was forced to come out for us in the pastoral thicket and was more upset than usual. He found a tree and stripped off a branch, creating a perfect switch. He made his way back to the house where he found my mother separating eggs in the hen house and came at her with a vengeance. You cow. Why is my cart not loaded? Where is that pendejo son of yours? She dared not answer him. Instead she ran out to find me. Noro, come quick. The longer you make him wait, the longer the beating. Oh God, hurry. I already had begun to load the cart when his switch whooshed near my eye and stung my face. Next time watch for me and be at the ready. Don't you ever make me wait for you again. Lopez mandated after a 12-minute beating. Then he drove off with what little we had worked so hard to accumulate. I knew something had to change, and soon. The fire began to die out as I waited for Cholo to come back from town. The dark purple blue sky felt like 8 o'clock, when out of the riverbank staggered Luz. Her dress wet and her breath smelled of old tequila. Noro, por favor. 8. She slammed into me like a spinning top, sending us both to the ground. Where have you been? I asked. What do you care? What's wrong with you anyway? All the boys in this town love me, no, adore me, and you, what's wrong with you? Ain't I pretty enough for you? She began to laugh wildly. You're crazy, I responded. Let me see if what they say is true about you farm boys. Her nipples were hard and wet against her white cotton dress. Atop me she fumbled for my pants. You've been drinking. You wouldn't be able to do it right anyway, I said. Maybe some other time. I half joked, pulling her up by the chin. She was fast asleep in my lap, her hands on my crotch. I decided not to wait for Cholo and began the long walk up to the master's house with this dead drunk girl folded over my back. Night had fallen and thankfully Senor Lopez was not home. The house servants immediately took her down from my shoulders and tended to her. I had been in the house only a few times before, during huge galas or fiestas, and usually on the day after for the cleanup. On one such occasion I found a necklace near the West Terrace, a locket of pure gold. I had removed the picture within and thought to keep the gold, but when I looked well at the photo, the eyes of the woman in the photo pierced my soul. The angel in the photo was unlike anyone I'd ever seen before or since. Her face was like a bright beacon of warm light I had been familiar with forever. I had to meet her. I was most certain Cholo knew the woman, and he would, on my request, arrange for her to come in person to retrieve it. On that day I took special care to shave and to look and be as clean and presentable as possible. My fingernails were the hardest to clean. 9. I was a tangled pit of nerves and fever. When she finally presented herself, the photo did not lie. Her lips were so moist, they held many secrets trapped by her heart. The wind that twisted the air she graced could cure any pain. I saved her from knocking as I opened the hello. You have something for me? I could not speak. My tongue was trapped. I felt sweat drip down my thighs and a cold heat hit my forehead. She was looking at me. My stomach raced. I extended my arm and opened my hand, exposing the gold locket and chain. No salutation. Thank you oh so very much. It is very valuable and my husband will be very pleased you found his necklace. Once as a child I had fallen from a high tree, hitting many branches on the way down. These few stabbing words from her lips had hurt me much, much worse. Don't you speak at all? She asked, never removing her eyes from mine. My name is Jasmine. Of course it had to be, I thought. Do you know your name? She spoke slowly and sweetly and smiled. I began to laugh, a very nervous laugh. Yes, of course. I'm so sorry, my name is Norberto. Can I invite you inside? Something to drink? I hoped. Oh no, I've got to get to town. Thank you very much all the same. One question, Norberto. She smiled. Why didn't you just keep the gold and throw with the picture? Surely you could have. I was about to, but I had to see for myself if the eyes in the picture existed, if they were real. This was much more valuable for me. I made sure to stand upright, firm, and not gush. Your words are sweet. She reached in her purse. Here is a small reward nonetheless. As she outstretched her hands I met them and gently shook my head once to the left and then to the right, never taking my eyes from her, and poured the locket into her white lace-gloved hands. From the length of her breath, small gleam in her face, and touch of her fragile hands, she had nonetheless told me everything I had needed to know about her without saying one word. She took the locket and chain, retracted her soft telling hands, and simply said, "Thank you. You're most welcome." I hoped she would not leave. She turned slowly and began down the mountain, and in a moment of reckless vanity she turned to me and asked, "Do you really like my eyes in this photo?" "Yes, I do. Better than any I've seen. The sun hot and my eyes blinding me dumb." "Well, here." She opened the locket and handed me her tiny photo. I physically felt my head enlarge. I felt like a king with the keys to a brand new castle. "If you won't accept money, I'm sure this will do." Her hands were dressed in the smoothest of silk cream lace brought down from Asia through Morocco on the backs of the darkest of African slaves. Modest pearls and oils adorned her. Her photo was now back in my hands. Jasmine never said goodbye, nor did I. We just turned from one another in slow ceremony. I stood there in the master's house soaking wet from carrying the master's drunken daughter. Miss Clara was the chief housekeeper. She interrogated me thoroughly. Where were you? It's very simple, Miss Clara. I was sitting near the bank and she just came out the river, a drunk fish. I explained. This has got to stop. She does this every time the master goes away, she said. 11. She leaned into me. Did you? No, Miss Clara. Absolutely not. I whipped. Miss Clara was old but sharp as a tack, kindly astute but stern. She had come to raise, understand and love the children more than anyone in the house. Like the furniture, Miss Clara came with the house. She started out in the house very young and stayed most all her life. She had seen 4 masters die and knew only a servant's life. Once when the house was up for sale and in between masters, Miss Clara decided to go to Europe, where on one hot summer's dawn in a Parisian cafe she met the only man she ever knew for a husband. He was tall and damningly beautiful. His long dark hair and mustache graced his face. Can I interest you in some breakfast? Miss Clara looked up and saw the loveliest thing on earth talking to her. Avoiding the room in the hostel she had rented, the night had escaped her in this little comfortable cafe. Morning was now seeping in through the windows. She was a short but handsomely erect woman. She thought it was all a big mistake and she covered her face while she laughed like a schoolgirl playing along. Oh my God, what time is it? She'd ask as he shifted his gaze from one side of the cafe to the other and finally landing on her. It took Miss Clara another moment to register what was happening to her, and when she did, her face went red with elation and inebriated intrigue. He wore an open dark blue shirt that showed off his chest. His pants were stretched tight and powder blue to match. Excuse me, don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. He moved slowly and quietly. The clink and jiggle of ice in his drink was like music to Miss Clara, and it complemented his walk perfectly. 12. They stepped out into the morning and had breakfast together at another cafe near the Champs-Élysées. Miss Clara invited him up to her hostel for coffee, but there was no coffee that afternoon. Your name? I don't even know your name. Miss Clara chased after him, wearing nothing but a white bed sheet as he made his way down the spiral stair. He turned around from halfway down and looked up at her, and they both exploded with laughter. Nikolai was a Russian expatriate transplanted in Paris who drank to excess and flirted with everyone. Popularity was his only flaw according to Miss Clara. He captivated everyone. He had been wealthy some time now and everyone noticed his blue-collar grace and style. Miss Clara loved every minute with him. Within a month and a half they were married. She was finally around someone who paid attention to her rather than to someone whom she served hand and foot. Nikolai owned and operated real estate within the immediate city-state and abroad. His most lucrative included a local private girls' reformatory. One day Miss Clara came home from the market and saw a young schoolgirl dressing in front of their bedroom mirror. Mortified, Miss Clara dropped the groceries. She thought she was a ghost or simply lost and in the wrong flat, but she made her way towards the frightened child anyway. Nikolai sprung from their bed, his pants half undone, and dismissed the young adolescent girl and told Miss Clara to simply forget about it. Similar incidences like this would happen several times in their short life together. 13. Miss Clara would cry and thought of returning to her native small town in South America, Cabo Rojo, the mansion she kept and the mystery man who would be her new master. Clara, do you love me? He knew she did but asked her anyway. Hot tears ran down her face. She mourned the demise of a fantasy life she was now living turned nightmare so far from home. Edgardo, where have you been? Your sister is dead, drunk upstairs once again, and everything is crazy here, Miss Clara demanded of Cholo as he finally made it home from town. Inside the mansion, Cholo was always addressed as Edgardo. What happened? He asked as he walked right past me without looking at or even acknowledging me. He carried a small brown paper bag in his left hand. Your sister's been running around with those horrible hijos del diablo boys again, drinking and doing God knows what, Miss Clara explained, exacerbated. Norberto, come with me, Cholo said, looking at but ignoring Carla in a voice low and methodical worthy of the name Edgardo. I will be up in my room if she wakes up. For the first time we walked together purposefully and defiantly up the majestic stairs in historic fashion. It's good to know you care, she yelled up the stairs sarcastically. It was apparent Miss Clara did not approve of me, or anyone like me in the house. 14. Norberto's hands trembled quickly like an old man uneasily attending to a simple task. His breathing short and faint like a wild whisper as he spun the doorknob and hurried us into his room. Okay, here is what you must do. He searched for words as he slammed the door behind us. I never gave you this, okay? The brown bag sopping wet with his perspiration gave up the gun. I smiled. This never happened, okay? He sputtered a short nervous laugh. He slipped me the gun. We both laughed together, celebrating the liberation that was manhood, the only true manhood which came from possessing a deadly weapon. I raised it high into the air, tilted it left to right like a novel expert, and admired its cold blackness. It's not meant for much without these. Norberto's magic wet, floppy brown paper bag produced a small box of shiny bullets. Not for here, outside. He held them from me. I simply outstretched my hand, gave him the look from my furrowed brow, and he automatically handed them over. I began to load it. Now I will be able to do all kinds of things. The gun clicked and ticked. The lights in the room began to flicker as the storm quickened and a familiar windy vacuum overtook the house and made the windows patter and shake. God, I hope this storm passes soon, I retorted as not to draw too much attention to the gun and my elation. Norberto walked towards the window ledge. Let me see, he said, turning his head in attention to the matter at hand. I handed the fully loaded gun to Norberto in one long even motion. He looked me square in the eye. We both share and own this, okay? I agreed and nodded, knowing that it would have to be this way. No problem. 15. I'll keep it here tonight and tomorrow you, okay? He delegated. We both smiled, looking down at our newborn baby.